Welcome back to the Vivid Racing YouTube channel. I'm Aaron, and today we have this 2020 Ford Raptor with us. Now, we're gonna be giving this truck our VR treatment, meaning we're gonna get some bolt-on mods plus an ECU flash to maximize all of the available power to the wheels. Obviously, these are amazing trucks and they're very capable. By adding a few bolt-ons, you really are maximizing that and getting even more out of your truck. Obviously, we're focused on the Raptor today, but a lot of what we're gonna be talking about is applicable to the F-150 platform as a whole. Now, we did just finish getting our baseline dyno runs, and we'll talk a little bit more about that in a little bit. But first, let's talk about the mods we're gonna be putting on the truck. For starters, I don't know if Ford could have made this engine sound any worse, so we're gonna be giving it the VR Performance Valvetronic exhaust. The truck itself doesn't come with any valves, so we're gonna be adding the valve function, and it's gonna be controlled with a remote in the cab. It just opens things up a ton with these turbocharged engines. This exhaust is gonna be a great option to just actually sound like a truck. Moving on, helping things breathe a bit, we got ourselves the VR Performance Cold Air Intake Kit, just helping things open up and breathe a lot better to help push some more air to make more power. Lastly, for bolt-on parts, what we have here is a blow-off valve spacer. This is just a nice cherry on top for car guys who have graduated to like a family vehicle, like a responsible family vehicle, who still want to hear your turbo sounds. If I had a truck with turbos on it, 10 out of 10 I'm putting these on because I like to hear turbos. That's it for the bolt-on mods. Obviously, if you wanted to run just these mods without a tune, you absolutely could, and you would still see some minor performance gains. But if you want to see some huge gains at the wheel, you're gonna need to tie it all together with an ECU flash. And that's why we're gonna be putting on our very own ECU flash to maximize all these bolt-ons to see the most amount of power possible with honestly minimal effort. All in all, each of these parts, even the ECU flash, is all very DIY friendly. Swapping exhaust, literally anybody can swap an exhaust. This is a very simple intake swap, and in terms of the ECU flash, realistically all you got to do is follow some instructions and you yourself can flash your own ECU. It really isn't rocket science. So I think that covers everything we're doing to the truck today. We did already run our baseline dyno runs, but to really show you how much power you can gain on a stock truck with just an ECU flash, we're gonna flash the truck technically tomorrow morning and run it on the dyno again. So we're gonna have some nice cool air in the morning before it gets hot. But I've done enough talking, so let's just fast forward this till tomorrow morning and jump into the ECU flash. All right, we are back at it, and we just finished flashing the tune to the ECU. Let's find out how much power just the ECU flash on a stock truck makes. We're gonna fire up the dyno. Let's jump into it. All right, so this wraps up our dyno session with the ECU flash, and we got some really clean, really good data. But make sure you guys stick around to the end because we're gonna cover all of this dyno data in full. But for now, we're gonna get started on the install. So I'm gonna rip the truck off, get started on that. Let's party. Well, hello there. Just wanted to pop in real quick and let you guys know if you're interested in installing any of these parts on your truck, we have made how-to install videos on each of these parts, whether it's the Valvetronic exhaust, the cold air intake, or the blow-off valve adapter. Keep an eye up in that corner for a little pop-up to take you to an install video if that's something you're interested in. And most importantly, if you want to buy any of these parts, make sure you go to the links in the description below to snag you some car parts. There's also a discount code in there. Maybe even leave a little comment when you make the purchase. Tell them I sent you to get some Raptor parts from the YouTube video. But that's enough tomfoolery. Let's get back to the action. We just got the exhaust fully installed. Everything worked great. We got the valves hooked up. I'm just gonna tidy up some wires here in the cabin. Everything happens behind in this rear passenger seat, and we're just running power directly to the back of the center console. There's a bunch of different ways you can do this. This is totally like up to personal preference, how you want to run the cables. If you want to get custom with it, I mean, that's totally at your discretion, but for ease of use, you just plug it into 12-volt power, hide all the cables best you can, and you're good to go. So everything operates with these wireless controllers. You get 2 of them. If it were me, I'd probably keep one in the glove box for just cheap insurance, and then one on my keychain to make sure I've always got the option to open the valves up because you don't want your truck sounding soft. Anyways, I'm gonna tidy up these wires real quick, but then we're gonna move on to the cold air intake. So let's party. Now that we have finished with the exhaust, it is time to move on to the engine bay to install our VR Performance cold air intake. Obviously, an exhaust and an intake aren't power adders, but what they do, especially when tied together, you're creating a higher efficiency in airflow, which means your engine can actually produce a little bit more power when you're just moving more air. Now, these filters we use for our intakes are amazing. They are big, they are heavy duty, they help bring in a lot more air into the engine. But what's really cool about these is that it's gonna be a long time before you have to buy another one, because these are washable and reusable. If you start seeing a bunch of gunk and dirt getting all grimy in it, you absolutely can clean them up. Additionally, a really cool thing about this intake system is that this is applicable to a ton of different F-150 platforms. But either way, let's start throwing this unit on the truck. All right, we're at the tail end here for everything on this Raptor. Lastly, we are installing our VR Performance blow-off valve adapter. It fits a handful of different F-150 platforms. Super cool little guy. It's a little piece of billet aluminum. You literally just remove your pressure release valve off of the cold side of the intercooler. You bolt in the bracket, you put the pressure release valve back in its spot. It's just a nice cherry on top for car guys who have graduated to like a family vehicle, like a responsible family vehicle, who still want to hear your turbo sounds. You can put this on a bone stock truck. You don't need a tune for this. Literally, you just remove the skid plate and it's a couple of bolts. You can have this done start to finish within an hour. But I've already got this all ripped apart. Obviously, I've already pulled the pressure release valve out. We're just gonna slap this back together and get this thing on the dyno and maybe go hear some spoolie boy sounds. All right, the time has come. It is finally time to run the dyno one last time with this truck now that it has the ECU flash, the cold air intake, and the exhaust, plus the blow-off valve adapter. Now, all in all, these bolt-ons purely just help gain efficiency with moving airflow, so you do see a slight power increase, but the reality is the flash does the bulk of the work here. We opted out of running the truck last night and just doing it this morning simply because it was late in the afternoon. The heat has really started to kick in here in Arizona. It was 100 degrees pretty much throughout the whole day yesterday. It's about 80 degrees outside right now. We should see a little bit more improvement with just the time of day that we're dynoing the truck, and we should have a little more success with that. So let's see how much power she makes. Okay, so we got some really good dyno data. We're gonna cover all that in a minute, but first, we're gonna go take it for a quick spin. I gotta say, I'm really pumped on the blow-off valve adapter. That was a lot louder than I expected it to be. It sounded like really good. So far, all three of these mods have been really tasteful. So we're gonna go take the truck out, and then we'll talk about some dyno numbers. So, let's party. So valves open, driving around initially, it's not bad at all. Like, I was curious if we'd get any drone in here, but honestly, literally not even an ounce of drone. Like it just sounds like a good exhaust. I gotta say, the blow-off valve really does complete it. Okay, let's turn the valve off or close it. The turbo sounds in this thing are so sick. So you hear the intake and blow-off valve adapter quite a bit with the valves closed, and it sounds awesome. I think it'd be everything I'd ever want in a turbo vehicle, is to be able to hear the psh, especially with how easy the install is with the blow-off valve adapter, and you get to actually hear your turbos. That's a win-win in my book. Oh, there's a TRX there. TRX don't want the smoke. Okay, I've been leading you guys on long enough. Let's get to the good stuff. Let's talk about our dyno runs. Now, if you remember from the very beginning of the video, I said we'd gotten our stock baseline runs. So let's talk about that first. This is the truck completely stock, not a single thing done to it. We have 500 foot-pounds of torque at the wheel to go along with 412 horsepower at the wheel as well. So really good numbers for this truck. Checks out with what the factory says. Good to go. So let's take a look and see how much power we made with simply just an ECU flash. So if we go straight to our torque, we saw a maximum of 558 foot-pounds of torque to go along with 432 horsepower. Pretty crazy that literally just from an ECU flash on a stock truck, we saw an additional 58 foot-pounds of torque and 20 horsepower. Obviously, if you don't want to do anything else to your truck, that is most definitely a great route to go to get a little bit more out of it. But if you tie one of these ECU flashes with some bolt-on parts, you can see some insane gains. So let's take a quick look at our final dyno runs we made with the ECU flash, with the bolt-ons. We made 621 foot-pounds of torque at about 3,100 RPM. So it's right where you're always going to be driving. You're going to have all that instant torque ready to go. And we made 476 horsepower. Now, I will give a quick disclaimer. Immediately after these initial runs, I did see slightly lower numbers, and that's pretty much because these engines run kind of hot and they get there pretty dang quick. So really, if you want to take advantage of this, you really should look at upgrading your cooling systems altogether. I think that would really maximize the performance of all these bolt-ons to maintain that power, because I pretty quickly saw heat soak and that killed a significant amount of power. So after the heat soak had set in, we were looking at 565 foot-pounds of torque and 472 horsepower. So the horsepower was able to stay, but the torque did not want to hang around once that heat soak had set in. So if you really want to maximize everything at the wheel, you definitely should upgrade that cooling system. But I would say those are pretty big numbers for what we're looking at. Let's see how they compare side by side. So first and foremost, the red lines represent horsepower, the blue lines represent torque. Everything is pretty linear in terms of gains. And I'll be completely honest, we saw a lot more power gains than I expected to see with the bolt-ons tied with the ECU flash. Now obviously the ECU flash does most of the work, but when you are able to tie together some bolt-ons that help that efficiency, you really do see a lot of beneficial performance out of it. Mainly speaking, we're going to look at these lower end RPMs. This is where you're mostly going to be driving. Looking at our peak torque now, about 3,200 RPM, we're seeing a gain from 460 foot-pounds of torque to 620. And then looking at our peak horsepower, where we're peak now is about 5,000 RPM, whereas without the tune, we were looking at about 4,600 RPM. At 5,000 RPM, we saw 476 horsepower with our ECU flash and bolt-ons. Now, if you compare that to stock, 5,000 RPM with nothing done to the truck, you saw 389 horsepower. Still good numbers, but if you're looking to maximize what your truck can do, this clearly is a good route to go. Well, that wraps up everything we're doing to this 2020 Ford Raptor. It now has the VR treatment. Obviously, this truck's an absolute ripper now, and it's worth every bit of these bolt-ons. We saw some massive gains. And as always, if you guys are interested in any of the parts we talked about today, make sure you check the links in the description below, along with a discount code for our YouTube viewers only. Now, YouTube is the only place we put these discount codes, so make sure you grab that and use that at checkout next time you buy some car parts. Might save some pennies in your pockets. But that's all we've got for you guys today. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed today's video, make sure you give us a like and a subscribe. Let us know what you guys thought in the comments below about this VR treatment on the F-150 Raptor. Thank you guys so much for watching. We'll see you next time. Peace.